Hello and thank you for joining us today here at the Bramble Patch. My name is Wendy and on technicals today we have Alicia. We do tend to film these in advance, so I'm not absolutely 100% sure when this is going out, but the sun's shining, it's beautiful, and we're starting to get blossom on the trees, so that's really nice for us to see. Today we're going to be looking at how to do a bear's paw block. So this is the block that we're going to look at how to make. Now, behind me, why I decided to do this particular block was my daughter took rather liking to a certain fabric. It's called Regency Zarafa. Now, at the moment we have this in stock. Whether we've still got it in stock when this tutorial goes out, I can't tell you. And this is it here. It's got beautiful drafts and she's done a stunning job of it. And one of Claire's very favourite techniques is bear's paw. She does bear's paw all year round out of so many different designs of fabric. And she's done this one and she's free machined it and done an absolute beautiful job. And you can probably still see it's a work in progress. She hasn't yet bound it because I went and borrowed it from her so that I could do the tutorial. I've also done something with a bear's paw recently out of current fabric, or it's current at the moment. Whether we've got it when this goes out, I can't tell you. And I've done this to look completely different. Now, Claire has got a cabin and she frequently asks me to do bits and bobs for her. So as I make things, she quite likes them. So this, as you can see, is bear paw, and it looks so different to what Claire's done purely because of the fabrics. You can do bear's paw in virtually any size you choose to. And they look actually really good. Now, in the previous tutorial, if you remember, you may have seen me show you the backing of this. So this is the backing that I was making for the cushion for this week. And totally made out of scraps, and that means it's just saved my larger pieces of fabric so that I can actually use it for something else. So this, the back of this was made using the crumped quilting technique in a previous tutorial that we filmed. So this is the bear's paw that I've done. So let's take a look and see how we've done it. I've tried to simplify it so that it is easy to do and it's just seamless, quite honestly, and hardly any wastage of fabric whatsoever. So like I said, you can use any, do them any size you want to. I have chosen to do this size. So these are coming out at 7 inches. And what we need to do to make this block, the size that I've done it, we need 2 pieces of the main fabric. So I've cut 2 pieces at 5 inches square. Okay. From the background fabric, so this is the outside of it, I've cut 1 square at 5 inches and 1 square at 2 3/4 inches. So that's all you actually need to make one block. So just set that aside. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the background fabric and the main fabric, just 1 square, and we're going to place those right sides together, like so. And all I'm going to do now, using my 1/4 inch foot, I'm going to sew all the way around the edges. So I'm totally enclosing the square. So these are my 2 5-inch squares, right sides together. Here we go. I've chosen to do it this way because I think it goes together really quickly and it's very accurate. If you prefer to make your half square triangles without trimming them, then just use your own technique. We did do a tutorial a few weeks ago and I showed, I think, 3 different ways of how to make half square triangles, depending on how many you actually want to make. So you can always refer to that if you just like to look at different ways of actually doing it. So all I've done now, I've sewn all the way around all 4 edges, enclosing it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take a ruler and my rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut 2 diagonal lines. I'm going to cut from here through to here, and here through to here. And I've actually done a little piece here just so that you can see. So that's the cut that I'm going to make, 2 cuts. When I cut this, I don't disturb it, I don't move it. I just leave the square in one place and just adjust the angle of the ruler. So now we have 4 triangles. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to press it open to the dark side. So I just take it to the ironing board, just give it a little press, roll the dark side back and just press. And just be careful that you press in the along the seam so that you don't stretch it or make it waver in any way. Rather than sort of move your iron from side to side, that's how you can actually stretch and make that, what should be a straight line, slightly wiggly. And we don't really want wiggly lines while we're doing half square triangles. So let's just press those back, like so. Oops, that went a bit too far. There we go. Just press that over, like so. Okay, so we've now got 4 half square triangles. So what I'd like to do now is to trim these down so they're all measuring 2 3/4 inches. So for that, I'm going to use my little 4.5 inch square. And I'm going to place the diagonal line along my sewn line, making sure that I can see the 2 3/4 inch line on the 2 bottom edges. I like to cut personally all 4 sides. That way I know that I've got rid of any loose threads, any little dog ears, and I've got all fresh sides to work with, because I find that they go together much, much better. And it really does go together very quickly. So that's 3. On number 4 now. The piece there, get rid of that. Like I say, Claire actually does this technique all the time. It really is, if not her very favourite, one of her, it's right up there at the top. Three, last one, almost there. So, there we go. Got that all enclosed there. I'm just positioning it just to make sure I've got that all done nicely. Okay, so we've got that all trimmed up. I can just set that aside now. Now what I like to do is I like to lay it out so that I can make sure that I've got everything in the correct position, because what you don't want to do is do the claws so they're facing the wrong way. So before I actually sew it together, I always, even now, I still lay it out in the correct order. So we've got the 4 half square triangles. We obviously have already got cut our 5 inch piece of fabric from the main fabric. And we have our 2 3/4 inch square. So the 2 3/4 inch square, I'm going to sit right to the top left-hand corner. And now what I want to do is place the claws on it. So all I'm going to do now is lay these so that I can see, oh, I haven't trimmed that one. That was the one that got away. Where's my ruler gone? Just trim that one. I obviously only trimmed 3. Getting carried away with myself. There we go. I just find this technique much quicker when you're wanting 4 anyway. I just think it's much quicker than doing the 2 at a time. It probably saves a little bit of fabric as well. Okay, I'll put that away again. So, if I lay these out, remember then it's not going to look as though they fit because you haven't got your seam allowances in it yet. So that is the way I like to lay mine out. So what we're going to do now, we're going to sew the side ones. I always do the side and then the top. If you do it in a routine, if you get in a routine, you tend not to make mistakes. So I'm going to sew these 2 together. Now when I sew them together, I like to sew from the inside seam towards the edge because we really want to make sure we've got a good 1/4 inch seam allowance. Obviously you need it on this side as well, but I want to get a good one on this side. Now also the other thing that you can do when you're doing Bear's Paw, you can have this part of it actually in a different fabric. So that could actually be a blue if I wanted it to be. And again, they look really nice. If you want to fussy cut something, you can do that, which is what Claire's done. She's got the giraffes actually fussy cut and positioned and centered, which actually looks really, really nice. Claire does a lot of fussy cutting. We both actually do a lot of English paper piecing. So we are used to actually fussy cutting rather a lot. Just trim that. So if you're not quite aware what fussy cutting is when you actually select a particular pattern on the fabric and centralize it and make sure you repeat that as you go along. Now I've actually seen that already. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press this seam towards the dark fabric just so that it actually looks better. It's more pleasing to the eye. Okay, so that's that one. So what I can do if I want to now, I can actually sew this one to the main block, which is what I'll do. So I'm going to roll it over, making sure I've got it in the right position. And generally when you sew on a machine, you generally have the smaller piece of fabric on the top. That is the rule of thumb. Sometimes it's more convenient not to, but that is the general rule of thumb. But also, particularly with this, by having the smaller piece of fabric on the top, it means that when you sew, you can make sure that you sew right through where those two, where the seam is at that point, which means you're not going to cut off the point on your triangle. Again, that would show more if you was using a different colour fabric for the centre square. That's what I tend to do. So as I approach this now, I can see exactly where that little join is, and I'm actually just going to sew straight through it. So I know I've got a perfect match there. And it's all these little tips and ideas that give your blocks or quilts that extra little bit of finesse. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to press the seam towards the centre panel. And the reason I'm going to do that, not particularly because it's a darker fabric, but because it's going to help eliminate the bulk. If I pressed it over towards the seamed part, I'm going to create even more bulk. So I'm going to press it away so that it doesn't look as very lumpy or anything like that. I'm just going to press that there. And then I'm going to hopefully be able to show you the point that we've just created by sewing it here, there. You get a perfect match because you can actually sew through. If I can turn it over, I don't know whether the camera will pick it up. Just here, you can actually see where I've sewn through. Okay, so that's that little bit. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to join these last pieces together. So I'll join this one to this one, and then I'll join this one to this one. And this will only take me a couple of minutes. So let's take this over to the sewing machine. And obviously when you do it, make sure that you hold the right seam that you want to sew, because what we don't want to do is turn it around and find out we've got the claws actually pointing in the wrong way. And I tell you that because we've all done it once or twice. So I always try and hold it in a particular way as I actually take it to the sewing machine. Let's trim that one. And once again, I'm going to actually press it to the dark fabric. Really nice seam allowance there. So I'm just going to lay that back just to make sure that I've got the claws pointing the right way. And now I'm just going to roll that one over, and I'm just going to sew the plain 2 3/4 inch block to that top. And these just fit together so nicely. Right, now I'm just going to explain how I'm going to press this one. So this one, if you remember, we have pressed the seam to the dark side here. But what we want this seam to go in the opposite direction so that they nest properly. So therefore, even though this is a light fabric, I'm actually going to press it towards the light. So this is now going to be stitched on here. Now, if I roll this over like so, I'm hoping you can see that this seam is going one way and this is going in the opposite direction. So therefore, these are just going to nest together like so. Now, if you prefer to put a pin in it or not, it's entirely up to you. I won't bother. And here we go. Now, once again, by sewing it like this, I can actually see where those triangles join, and I'm going to sew directly through those stitches that cross over each other. Like so. All I'm going to do now is, now if I want to now, I can actually press this back. So hopefully you can see once again here that you've got a perfect point. So if I lay that like so, now when you put these together, you can actually just butt them up to each other. Obviously you won't have this step because that will be your seam allowance that will disappear. Or you could put a sash in between it. Now on here, Claire's put a beautiful, very, very narrow one here. You can see that she's put these on point, just the 3 of them. These are angled out, or you've got 4 together. So you really, really can actually make different designs out of these. And these make lovely cornerstones, as Claire's got them on here. But even on a large quilt, they look probably more complicated than they are. But I find by doing the squares the same and just cutting it diagonally, I think it saves a lot of time, and they actually are really quite accurate. So that actually brings us to the end of today's tutorial here at the Bramble Patch with the Bear's Paw block. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye for now.